5 years ago, the storm had come from nowhere, violent and merciless. Mira heard their screams before she saw the fishing boat, a small vessel tossed like driftwood against waves that towered 3 stories high. She should have swum away. Her mother's warnings echoed in her mind. Humans are cruel. Humans take. Humans destroy. But the screams were desperate, terrified. Children's voices mixed with men's pleas. She broke the surface during a flash of lightning, her silver tail propelling her toward the capsizing boat. 6 men clung to the splintered wood. A woman clutched 2 small boys. The boat groaned, splitting further with each wave. "Hold on!" Mira called, though she knew they couldn't understand her language, the melodic tongue of the merfolk, born from whale song and tide whispers. She worked through the night. One by one, she guided them to floating debris, pushing them toward the distant shore. Her muscles burned. Salt stung her eyes. But she persevered until dawn broke gray and cold over the horizon. The last man she saved looked at her with wonder. "Angel," he whispered, reaching to touch her face. She should have recognized the greed behind his gratitude. When she grew too exhausted to swim, when her tail could barely propel her away from the shallows, they struck. Nets, reinforced with iron chains that burned her scales, hooks that tore through her dorsal fin, rough hands dragging her onto the beach while she screamed in a language they didn't understand. "Worth a fortune," one man laughed, the same man whose son she'd saved. "Museums will pay thousands, maybe more if we keep her alive." They kept her in a tide pool for 3 days, poking her with sticks, discussing prices. The woman whose children she'd rescued brought her rotting fish, as if Mira were a pet. The cuts from the iron festered. Infection spread through her tail, turning her silver scales black at the edges. On the 3rd night, when the tide came in strong and their attention wavered, Mira summoned the last of her strength. She called to the ocean with everything she had, a wordless plea that resonated through the deep. The sea answered with fury. A rogue wave crashed over the beach, sweeping her back into the arms of home. She never looked back at the humans scrambling on the shore, never heard their renewed screams as the ocean's wrath continued through the night. But she carried the scars, physical ones that traced her tale like a roadmap of cruelty, and deeper ones, carved into her soul, that made her swear she would never, ever trust a human again. Present day, the sea caves had become Mira's sanctuary and prison. Located 3 miles from the nearest human settlement, carved deep into underwater cliffs where sunlight barely penetrated, they offered the isolation she craved. Other merfolk avoided these waters, too close to humans, too shallow for comfort, too lonely for their social nature. Perfect. Mira spent her days hunting in the deeper waters, her nights floating in the cave's pool, staring at the bioluminescent algae that dotted the ceiling like stars. She'd grown thin over the years, not dangerously so, but enough that her sister Coraline commented on it during her quarterly check-in visits. "You're wasting away," Coraline had said last month, her pink tail flicking with agitation. "Mother is worried. The colony is worried. You can't hide forever, Mira." "I'm not hiding. I'm living. This isn't living. This is existing. There's a difference." But Coraline didn't understand. None of them did. They hadn't felt human hands tearing at their scales, hadn't heard the cold calculation in human voices as they discussed which parts of you would fetch the highest price. The colony spoke of humans with caution, yes, but also with curiosity. Some younger merfolk even ventured close to the shores, collecting human trinkets, watching their strange land-bound dances. Fools, all of them. Mira surfaced in her cave, pulling herself onto the smooth rock ledge where she often sat. Her reflection rippled in the pool below, long dark hair matted with seaweed, eyes that had once sparkled like sea glass now dull and guarded, the silver of her tail dimmed to pewter. The scars stood out, raised and white against her scales. She traced them absently, a habit she'd developed. Above, through the cave opening, she could hear the distant sound of human life, laughter, music, the rumble of their machines. She'd learned to tune it out most days, but tonight the wind carried the sounds more clearly, a celebration of some kind. She dove back underwater, seeking the silence of the deep. 3 days later, the weather turned. Mira sensed it before the humans did, the way fish scattered to deeper waters, how the current shifted with urgent purpose, the pressure change that made her gills ache. A storm was coming, and not a minor one. The ocean was preparing for violence. She secured her few possessions: a collection of shells, a piece of polished driftwood, the pearl necklace her grandmother had given her before passing. Then she settled in the deepest chamber of her cave to wait it out. The storm hit at dusk. Even underwater, Mira felt the ocean's fury, currents that pulled and pushed with chaotic force, the muffled roar of wind and wave above. She'd weathered worse. She'd weather this. But then she heard it. A sound that cut through the storm's violence, through her carefully constructed walls of indifference. A child, screaming. Mira froze. It was probably nothing. A seabird's cry distorted by wind, her imagination playing tricks. She would not surface. She would not investigate. She had learned her lesson about helping humans. The scream came again, more desperate. Words now, barely audible. Help. Please. Somebody. Not my problem. Not my concern. But the voice was so small, so terrified. And despite everything, despite the scars on her tail and the deeper wounds in her soul, Mira found herself swimming toward the surface. She broke through into chaos. Rain lashed down in sheets. Waves crested 15 feet high. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the cliffs that rose dark and jagged to her left. And there, clinging to a rocky outcrop 20 feet above the waterline, was a child, a girl, no more than 6 or 7, in a yellow rain slicker that billowed in the wind. She'd somehow made it onto a narrow ledge, but the tide was rising fast, waves already reaching for her with white-capped fingers. "Hold on!" Mira shouted, forgetting the child couldn't understand her. The girl's head whipped toward Mira's voice. Even from this distance, Mira could see her terror, but also hope. The dangerous, desperate hope of someone spotting rescue. This is a mistake. Swim away. Let humans save their own. But even as her mind screamed warnings, Mira was already calculating angles and currents. The cliff face was too steep for the child to climb. The tide would sweep her away within minutes. And in this storm, even if someone on land knew she was missing, they'd never reach her in time. Mira dove, swimming hard against the current toward the cliff base. She surfaced at the rock face, gripping the slippery stone with fingers that had grown strong from years of solitary hunting. "I'm coming," she called, beginning to climb. The girl watched with wide eyes, saying something Mira couldn't hear over the storm. Mira pulled herself upward, her tail finding purchase in cracks and crevices, her arms hauling her body higher. It was awkward. Merfolk weren't meant for climbing, but desperation made her strong. She reached the ledge just as a massive wave crashed against the cliff. Salt spray drenched them both. The girl lost her grip, sliding toward the edge. Mira lunged, catching the child's arm. The girl weighed almost nothing, but Mira's position was precarious, her tail hanging over empty air, one hand gripping the rock, the other holding the child. "I've got you," Mira said softly, pulling the girl close. The child wrapped small arms around Mira's neck, sobbing into her shoulder. For a moment, Mira just held her, feeling the rapid rabbit beat of the child's heart, so fragile, so trusting. Everything in Mira that had hardened over 5 years cracked just slightly. Get her to safety, that's all. Then disappear. Mira positioned the girl on her back. Hold tight. Don't let go, no matter what. The girl's arms tightened. Mira took a breath, said a prayer to the ocean that had both cursed and saved her, and dove. The swim to shore was brutal. The current fought her every stroke. The child's weight, minimal on land, became significant in water. Waves battered them, trying to tear them apart. But Mira had survived worse. She'd survived betrayal, imprisonment, the slow poison of iron in her wounds. She would survive this. She would save this child. When she finally felt sand beneath her, Mira's muscles were screaming. She pulled them both onto the beach, beyond the tide line, collapsing beside the girl. The child was unconscious but breathing, her chest rising and falling steadily. Mira should leave, now, before anyone came. But she waited, just until the girl's eyes fluttered open. Brown eyes, warm despite the storm. The child focused on Mira's face, then looked down at the silver tail sprawled on the sand. "Mermaid," she whispered with wonder, not fear. Mira managed a weak smile. "You're safe now. Stay here. Your family will find you." She turned to drag herself back to the water, but the girl caught her hand with surprising strength. "Thank you," the child said. "Thank you, pretty mermaid." Something in Mira's chest broke completely. She squeezed the small hand once, then pulled away and slipped back into the welcoming embrace of the sea. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Because if she did, she might see what she'd worked so hard to forget, that not all humans were monsters, that some were just fragile, frightened children who needed saving, that maybe, just maybe, she'd been wrong to lock her heart away forever. The next morning, Mira woke to the sound of boats. Dozens of them, their engines rumbling even through the water. She peered from her cave entrance to see the ocean's surface dotted with vessels, fishing boats, patrol craft, even what looked like military ships, all searching, their patterns methodical and determined. They were looking for her. Mira retreated deeper into her cave, her heart pounding. Of course they were searching. She'd revealed herself, broken the most fundamental rule of merfolk: never let humans see you. The child would have talked. They always talked. But there was something different about this search. The boats didn't carry nets or harpoons. No one was shouting or pointing weapons at every shadow in the water. If anything, their approach seemed almost respectful. Coraline appeared at the cave entrance that afternoon, her expression caught between exasperation and worry. "Have you lost your mind completely? The entire human navy is looking for you." "I know. I'm not going out there." "Good. Finally, some sense. Mother wants you to come home, back to the colony. At least until this dies down." "No. Mira." "I said no." Mira turned away, but not before seeing the hurt in her sister's eyes. "I'm sorry, I can't. The colony doesn't understand. You don't understand." Coraline was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was gentler. "They say you saved a child. The council member's daughter. I didn't know who she was. I just heard her screaming. So you broke your vow, the one you've held on to for 5 years like armor. Why?" Mira didn't have an answer. Or rather, she had too many answers. All of them complicated, all of them terrifying. Because the moment she'd chosen to surface, to save that child despite her fear and her scars, she'd admitted something to herself. That isolation wasn't healing. It was just another kind of dying. "I don't know," she finally whispered. Coraline swam closer, resting a hand on Mira's shoulder. Maybe that's the first step, not knowing, being open to possibility again. After her sister left, Mira floated in her pool, staring at nothing. The boats continued their search above, and somewhere in a human settlement she'd never seen, a child was probably telling stories about a silver-tailed mermaid who appeared from the storm. Mira touched the scars on her tail, then looked at her hands, the same hands that had pulled a drowning child from death, hands that could hurt or heal, destroy or save. Maybe Coraline was right. Maybe the first step was not knowing, being open, but that didn't make it any less terrifying. As night fell, and the boats finally withdrew, Mira made a decision. She would stay in her cave. She would not seek out humans, or let herself be found. But she wouldn't run either. If fate had decided to tangle her life with theirs again, so be it. She just hoped this time, the ending would be different. In a castle 10 miles inland, Alpha King Kale woke from the same dream he'd been having for weeks. A dream of silver scales, dark eyes, and a destiny he couldn't yet understand. Tomorrow, he would ride to the coast himself, because the creature who'd saved Counselor Thomas's daughter wasn't just a myth to be captured or feared. She was the answer to a prophecy written long before either of them was born. The search parties continued for 3 days before Kale arrived at the coastal settlement. He'd delayed the journey, wrestling with the implications of what his seer had told him the night after the child was rescued. "The Guardian of Waters has revealed herself," old Marin had said, her clouded eyes seeing things beyond the physical realm. "Your souls are bound, my king. 2 halves of an ancient compact. Only together can you prevent the war that comes." Kale had dismissed it as superstition. He was a practical man, a warrior who'd earned his position through strength and strategy, not mysticism. But the dreams had intensified since that night. Dreams so vivid he woke gasping, tasting salt water, feeling phantom currents against his skin. And in every dream, she was there, silver-tailed, dark-eyed, calling to him in a language he somehow understood. He stood now on the beach where the child had been found, his beta Marcus beside him. The morning sun glinted off calm waters, giving no hint of the storm that had raged 3 nights prior. The girl says the mermaid had scars, Marcus reported, reading from notes taken during the interviews. Long white marks along her tail. She seemed sad, even when the child thanked her. Cale crouched, running his fingers through the sand. He could feel it, a residual energy, something that made his wolf stir restlessly beneath his skin. His kind had magic in their blood, an ancient gift that let them sense other supernatural beings, and this presence felt old, powerful, and deeply wounded. "She's still here," Kyle said quietly. "Close by, watching. How can you be certain?" "I can feel her." He stood, turning to face the water. "Call off the boats, station guards along the beach, but tell them to observe only. No weapons, no aggression. I want her to know she's safe. And if she doesn't show herself," Cale smiled grimly, "then I wait. Prophecy or not, I owe her a debt. She saved one of ours." From her cave, Mira watched the new arrival through the crystalline water. He was different from the others. Taller, moving with a predator's grace that she recognized even at this distance. Power radiated from him like heat, making her instincts scream both warning and something else. Something that made her gills flutter and her heart race in a way that had nothing to do with fear. Alpha. The word rose unbidden in her mind. She'd heard tales of the werewolf kings, rulers of the inland territories, but had never seen one. They rarely came to the coast, preferring their forests and mountains. Yet here he was, standing on the beach like he was waiting for something. Waiting for her. She dove deeper, retreating to her cave. Whatever game the humans were playing, whatever this newcomer wanted, she wouldn't be drawn in. The child was safe. Her debt was paid. That was the end of it. But that night, he came alone. Mira was floating in her pool when she sensed him. That same powerful presence, now amplified by proximity. She surfaced cautiously, peering toward the cave entrance where the underwater passage met a small air pocket and rocky shore. He sat on the rocks, seemingly unbothered by the darkness or the cold. In the bioluminescent glow, she could see him clearly. Strong features, dark hair, eyes that gleamed amber in the dim light. He wore simple clothes, no armor or weapons visible. "I know you're there," he said, his voice deep and carrying easily across the water. "I'm not here to harm you. I only want to talk." Mira remained silent, unmoving. "My name is Cale. I'm the Alpha King of the Northern Territories. The child you saved, Lily, is the daughter of one of my council members. Her family wants to thank you. I want to thank you." Still, Mira said nothing. Cale shifted, and she tensed, ready to dive, but he only reached into a pack beside him, pulling out a cloth bundle. "I brought you something. A gift, if you'll accept it." He unwrapped it carefully, revealing what looked like fish, but not the rotting scraps those fishermen had thrown at her years ago. These were fresh, premium cuts of tuna and salmon, still glistening. He placed them on a flat rock near the water's edge, then moved back. "I don't expect you to trust me. I understand you have reasons not to trust any of us. But I want you to know that you're safe here. I've ordered all boats away. My guards have been instructed to protect these waters, not patrol them. This is your sanctuary, and I'll make sure it stays that way." He stood to leave, then paused. "I have dreams about you, about the ocean, about a destiny I don't fully understand yet. An old seer tells me our souls are bound, that we're meant to stop a war. I don't know if I believe in prophecy, but I believe in debts. You saved one of ours. Whatever you need, whatever protection I can offer, it's yours. No strings, no traps." He left then, his footsteps fading into the night. Mira waited a full hour before approaching the fish. Her stomach growled. She'd been eating poorly, distracted by the boats and searchers. These were good cuts, prepared with care, not thrown at her like scraps. She took them back to her pool and ate slowly, trying to ignore the way her heart had hammered when he'd spoken about dreams, about destiny, trying to ignore that some broken part of her had wanted to surface, to speak, to see if his eyes held the same warmth his voice had carried. Kel returned the next night, and the night after that. Always alone, always sitting in the same spot, always bringing food, or sometimes just talking into the darkness. He spoke about his kingdom, about the pressures of leadership, about the growing tensions between the supernatural communities and humans who feared what they didn't understand. There are factions on both sides pushing for conflict. he said on the fourth night. Humans who want to hunt and cage creatures like you and me. Supernaturals who want revenge for centuries of persecution. I've managed to maintain peace, but it's fragile. One wrong move, one incident, and everything shatters. Mira found herself drifting closer each night, staying just beneath the surface, listening. His voice had become familiar, almost comforting, and the things he spoke of resonated with her own fears. She'd seen how humans could be, but she'd also heard stories from other merfolk about supernatural beings who were just as cruel. On the fifth night, she finally surfaced. Cale's head turned immediately, his amber eyes finding her in the dim light. For a long moment, neither spoke. Mira kept her distance, only her head and shoulders above water, her tail ready to propel her away at the first sign of threat. "Hello," Kyle said softly, like he was afraid of startling a wild animal. Which, she supposed, she was. "Why do you come here?" Her voice was rough from disuse, the words in his language awkward on her tongue. She'd learned human speech from her grandmother, who'd believed in maintaining communication channels even with surface dwellers, but she rarely used it. "Because I meant what I said, about the debt, about protection." He paused. "And because I can't seem to stay away. The dreams have gotten stronger since I met you, or rather, since I came to these waters. I see you in them, clear as I see you now. I don't believe in prophecies. Neither did I, until recently." He smiled, and it transformed his face from intimidating to almost gentle. "But prophecy or not, I believe in choices, and I choose to be here, to offer friendship, if you'll accept it." Mira wanted to dive away, to retreat to safety. But another part of her, the part that had saved a drowning child despite her fears, urged her to take a risk. "I'm Mira," she said finally. His smile widened. "It's an honor to meet you properly, Mira." Over the following weeks, a tentative friendship formed. Mira began to surface earlier in Cale's visits, staying longer, even pulling herself partially onto the rocks to talk more easily. He never pushed, never tried to touch her or move closer than she allowed. He simply existed in her space with a patience that slowly eroded her defenses. He told her about his childhood, raised to be alpha from birth, trained in combat and politics before he could fully shift, about losing his parents to a territorial dispute when he was 19, taking the throne too young, surrounded by advisors who saw him as a boy playing king. "I had to prove myself every day," he said. "Every decision scrutinized, every show of mercy seen as weakness. I became hard because I had to be, but somewhere along the way, I forgot how to be anything else." Mira found herself sharing too, not about the betrayal, not yet, but about the loneliness of her exile, about watching the world from a distance, neither fully part of the Mir colony nor the surface world. "I used to love humans," she admitted one night. "Their music, their stories, the way they built impossible things and dreamed bigger than the ocean. My grandmother said I was too curious, that it would get me in trouble." She traced the scars on her tail absently. She was right. Cale noticed the gesture. "What happened to you?" Mira's throat tightened. "What always happens when humans see something they want? They take it." The silence that followed was heavy. When Cale spoke again, his voice was rough with barely contained anger. "Who did this to you? It doesn't matter. It was years ago. It matters to me." The intensity in his voice made her look up, meeting his amber eyes. In them, she saw not pity, but fury. Not at her, but for her. And something else, something that made her breath catch. "If you tell me who," he continued quietly, "I'll make sure they face justice. Justice won't erase the scars. No, but it might help you carry them." The turning point came during the 8th week of their meetings. Cale had brought scrolls, ancient texts his seer had given him about the prophecy. He spread them on the rocks, translating the old language. "It speaks of a guardian of waters and an alpha of the pack," he read. "When the world stands on the brink of war between land and sea, they shall emerge, 2 souls bound by ancient magic, their union the key to peace." "Union?" Mira's voice was sharp. "It's mentioned throughout. A bonding of souls, a joining that creates something. A bridge between worlds, maybe. The texts are vague." He looked at her carefully. "Mira, I think we're soulmates. True mates." She dove underwater immediately, her heart racing. Soulmates. Mates. No, she wasn't ready for this. Wasn't ready for... Kale's voice, muffled by water. Mira, please, I'm not asking for anything. I'm just telling you what the texts say. She surfaced at the far side of the pool. You said you don't believe in prophecy. I said I didn't. Past tense. He ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated. But I feel it, Mira. Every time I'm near you, every time I hear your voice, my wolf recognizes you. And I think part of you recognizes me too. She wanted to deny it, but she couldn't, because he was right. From that first moment she'd sensed him on the beach. Something in her had responded, had known. Even if it's true, she said carefully, that doesn't mean we have to follow some predetermined path. You said you believe in choices. I do. And I choose to pursue this, to pursue us. He held her gaze. But only if you choose it too. I won't force destiny on you, Mira. I'm asking you to consider the possibility that maybe we were meant to find each other, that maybe your pain and my loneliness were leading us here, to this moment. Before she could respond, shouts echoed from outside the cave. Then Marcus's voice, urgent. Kale, we have a situation. Kale was on his feet instantly. Stay here, he told Mira, then disappeared into the passage. But Mira didn't stay. She swam through the underwater tunnels, emerging in the open ocean. What she found made her blood run cold. 3 boats, bristling with weapons, harpoons, nets with iron weights, electric prods. Not Kale's people. These were hunters, the kind who sold merfolk parts on the black market. And they were heading straight for her cave. She heard the splash of bodies hitting water, Kyle and his guards trying to intercept. But the hunters were prepared, were ready. One of them spotted her. His shout of triumph cut through the night. There! The scarred one! That's her! The scarred one. They'd been looking specifically for her. Someone had told them where to find her, had described her marks. Betrayal, sharp and familiar, lanced through her chest, and the only people who knew about her scars, about this cave, Kale's people, his council, someone he trusted. She dove deep, swimming fast, her mind racing. Not again. She wouldn't be caught again. She wouldn't... Something wrapped around her tail. Not nets. Rope, tied expertly, tightening as she struggled. She thrashed, using her strength to break free, but more ropes came, and hands, pulling her toward the surface. Through the water, she saw Kale fighting. His body half shifted into something between man and wolf, taking down hunters with brutal efficiency. But there were too many, and they were too prepared. One hunter aimed a harpoon gun at Kale's back. And despite everything, despite the betrayal, despite her fear, Mira screamed a warning in a voice that carried through water and air alike. A mere song that made the ocean itself surge in response. The wave that rose swept everyone away. Hunters, guards, and Kale himself, throwing them toward the shore. In the chaos, Mira broke free of the ropes and dove deeper than she'd ever gone, into the cold darkness where no human would follow. But as she fled, she heard Kale's voice, raw with desperation, calling her name, and she realized with horrible clarity that she'd made a terrible mistake. Not in warning him, but in starting to trust again, in letting him into her heart, because now, leaving hurt worse than any physical wound ever could, Mira didn't return to her cave. She couldn't. The location was compromised, and even if Kyle hadn't betrayed her directly, someone in his circle had. Instead, she swam to the deepest trenches, where the pressure crushed light itself into non-existence, where even other merfolk rarely ventured. She floated in that crushing darkness, her body aching, her heart a shattered thing in her chest. The irony wasn't lost on her. She'd finally opened herself to possibility, to connection, and fate had punished her for it. Some lessons, it seemed, had to be learned twice. On the 3rd day of her exile, Coraline found her. "The entire colony is looking for you," her sister said, her pink tail barely visible in the dim bioluminescence Mira had created. "Mother is frantic, and there's a werewolf alpha camped on the beach refusing to leave until he sees you. Tell him I'm gone. Tell him I died. I don't care. Mira, he betrayed me, Coral. Or someone he trusted did. Same difference." Coraline swam closer, her expression troubled. "I spoke with him. He's tearing his own council apart trying to find who leaked your location. 3 members have already been arrested. He looks broken, Mira, like he'd tear the world apart to make this right. Words, actions, What's the difference when I'm still hunted? The difference is he's actually doing something about it. Coraline grasped Mira's shoulders. And there's more. The attacks have started. Human radicals bombed a mere settlement up the coast. 7 dead, including younglings. The Mer clans are calling for retaliation. If someone doesn't stop this, we're headed for full-scale war. Mira closed her eyes. Lily's innocent face flashed in her mind. Warm brown eyes. Small hand squeezing hers. How many more children would die, human and Mer alike, if this escalated? Why do I have to be the one to stop it? She whispered. Why can't I just hide? Because you already know the answer to that. You saved that child when you could have swam away. You warned Cale when that hunter aimed at his back. You're not someone who hides when others suffer, no matter how much you want to be. A new voice echoed through the water, ancient, resonant, speaking in the old Mer tongue. Your sister speaks truth, little guardian. Mira turned to see Elder Thessaly, the oldest of their kind, her white tail ghostly in the darkness. She rarely left the deepest sanctuaries, appearing only for matters of grave importance. Elder, Mira bowed her head instinctively. The prophecy was written when I was but a youngling, Thessaly said, swimming in slow circles around them. I remember the seer who spoke it, a human woman who'd been given temporary gills to deliver her message to both our peoples. She said that one day, when hatred threatened to drown us all, 2 wounded souls would emerge, a guardian who'd been betrayed by land, an alpha who'd been hardened by duty. Only by choosing each other, not because of destiny but in spite of their pain, could they forge a new path. I don't want to be part of any prophecy. The prophecy doesn't care what you want, child. But here's what matters. It speaks of choice, not fate forcing your hand, but you choosing to trust again. Him choosing vulnerability over strength. That's the magic. Not some predetermined outcome, but the act of choosing love when everything tells you to choose fear. Thessaly touched Mira's scarred tail gently. True power isn't avoiding pain. It's choosing to love despite it. You know this already. You proved it when you saved that drowning child. The beach was crowded when Mira finally returned. Cale had called a gathering, not just his people, but representatives from the Mer colonies, human settlements, and other supernatural communities. Tensions ran high. She could feel them even from the water. She surfaced slowly, just beyond the breakers. Every instinct screamed to flee, but she forced herself to stay visible. Cale saw her immediately. The relief that flooded his face was so intense it was almost painful to witness. He stepped toward the water, stopped himself, then called out, Mira, thank the gods. Please, I need to speak with you. We all need... I know about the attacks, she interrupted, her voice carrying across the water. Coral told me. I know about the war that's coming. Then you know we need to stop it. Together. The way the prophecy... I don't care about the prophecy. The words exploded from her. I care about children who'll die because adults can't stop hating each other. I care about families torn apart by violence. But I don't care about some ancient text telling me who I'm supposed to love or what I'm supposed to do. The beach went silent. Kyle stared at her, something unreadable in his expression. Mira swam closer, until she was in the shallows, her tail visible to everyone. Let them see her scars. Let them see what their kind, both human and supernatural, were capable of inflicting. 5 years ago, I saved human lives, and they repaid me with torture. 3 weeks ago, I saved a child, and hunters came for me. You want me to trust? To believe in destiny? Give me one reason why I should. Cale walked into the water, fully clothed, until he stood waist-deep. His guards moved to follow, but he waved them back. When he spoke, his voice was low, meant only for her, but the supernatural beings present would hear anyway. I can't give you a reason. I can't undo what was done to you. Can't promise you'll never be hurt again. I found the traitor, Counselor Petros, the father of the child you saved. He sold your location to hunters. Thought you were a threat to his daughter. Kyle's hands clenched. He's in chains now, awaiting trial. But that doesn't fix this. Nothing I say will fix this. Then why are you here? Because I'm asking anyway. Not because of prophecy or destiny or any of that, but because in the 8 weeks I spent sitting in that cave, talking to you, I found something I'd lost years ago. Peace, connection. Someone who understood what it meant to be scarred by duty and pain. He took a step closer. You made me remember how to be more than just an alpha. You reminded me I could be just Kale. Mira's throat tightened. Behind Kal, she could see the gathered crowd. Humans, merfolk, wolves, all watching, all waiting to see if ancient hatreds would continue, or if something new might begin. I'm terrified, she admitted quietly. Of trusting, of being hurt again, of me, Kale finished. I know. I'm terrified too. Of failing my people. Of failing you. Of letting this prophecy trap us both into something neither of us chose freely. He extended his hand slowly. So let's choose. Not because fate demands it, but because we want to. I choose you, Mira. Scars, and fear, and all the broken pieces. Do you choose me? She stared at his hand. Scarred itself, she noticed. Marked by battles and losses, by the weight of leadership. They were both wounded things, really. Both trying to protect themselves from more pain. But Thessaly's words echoed. True power isn't avoiding pain. It's choosing to love despite it. Mira reached out and took his hand. The moment their skin touched, power erupted. Not violent, but undeniable. The water around them began to glow, phosphorescent and bright. Kyle's eyes flashed amber, and Mira felt something in her chest unlock, a door she'd barred shut opening to let light stream through. The crowd gasped. Coraline was crying, and Mira understood with sudden clarity what the prophecy had meant. Their union didn't create peace magically. It demonstrated it. Showed that trust could be rebuilt, that different worlds could touch without destroying each other. That choice was more powerful than destiny. But the gathering was shattered by screams. Boats appeared on the horizon, dozens of them, flying the colors of the human radical faction, and from the water's depths, mere warriors rose, faces set with vengeance. Someone had leaked the gathering's location. Both sides had come for war. Get everyone to safety, Kale commanded, his body shifting, preparing for battle. But Mira held his hand tighter. No more fighting. Not today. Mira, there's too many. Trust me. She dove, pulling him with her. Kale, still in half shift, could hold his breath longer than humans, and she swam them to the center of where the two forces would meet. Then she surfaced, pulling herself up on a piece of floating debris, Kale beside her. Both fleets stopped, confused by the sight. A mermaid and a werewolf alpha, standing together in no man's water. Enough, Mira's voice carried, amplified by mere magic. I am the one you humans hunt, the scarred mermaid. I'm right here. Come take me if you dare, but know that this alpha stands with me. Know that mer warriors will defend me. Know that my capture means war. From the mer side, a warrior called out, and he is the alpha who ordered boats to protect our hunting grounds, who arrested the human who betrayed our sister. He stands with us now. The leader of the human radicals, a grizzled man with hate-filled eyes, laughed bitterly. You think standing together changes anything? You're an abomination. Both of you. Consorting with monsters. I was hunted by your kind. Mira cut him off, her voice cold. Chained. Tortured. For the crime of saving human lives. This man's council member sold my location to hunters, hoping I'd be killed or captured. She paused, letting that sink in. But I'm still here, and I'm making a choice. She pulled something from around her neck, the pearl necklace her grandmother had given her, the most precious thing she owned. She placed it in Kale's palm, then took his hand in hers, pressing her thumb to his wrist. Her nail broke skin, just a drop of blood, welling bright red. Kale understood immediately. He did the same, his claw pricking her palm. Their blood mingled, mixing with the seawater between their joined hands. In mare culture, Coraline's voice rang out, sharing blood creates kinship. And in wolf culture, Marcus added from shore, the alpha's mate mark bonds souls. Mira felt Kale's teeth graze her shoulder, gentle but unmistakable. A claiming, a bond, visible to all. And in that moment, she chose to let him in, not because prophecy demanded it, but because wounded and scarred as they both were, they fit together. The mark blazed silver on her skin. The mingled blood in the water began to glow, spreading outward in ripples that touched both fleets, and everyone felt it. A pulse of something ancient and undeniable. Not compulsion, but invitation. A whisper that said, Choose differently. Choose peace. Choose tomorrow over yesterday. On the human boats, weapons lowered slowly. In the water, mere warriors relaxed their grips on spears. The hate didn't vanish. It never could, not completely. But in that moment, it was outweighed by something stronger. Possibility. The radical leader spat into the water and turned his boat around. Most of his fleet followed, though some stayed, uncertain. The mere warriors looked to Mira, who nodded once. They began to sink back into the depths. Not everyone would accept this. There would be more conflicts, more struggles. But the war, the one that would have drowned them all, had been averted. For now. 3 months later, Mira stood at the window of Kale's chambers, their chambers now, watching the sun set over the distant ocean. She could walk on land now, for limited periods. Elder Thessaly had taught her the magic, a gift that required blood sacrifices from both Mira and Kale monthly. It was painful, temporary, but worth it. Behind her, Kale finished reviewing reports. "The council has approved the joint patrols," he said. "Mirguards and wolves, protecting both the waters and the coastline together. And the human settlements? 30 have signed the peace accords. More are coming around." He joined her at the window, wrapping arms around her waist. "We're making progress." She leaned into him, feeling safe in a way she'd never thought possible. The scars on her tail, visible even in her current leg's form, no longer hurt. Oh, they were still there, would always be there. But they'd become something different. Not markers of pain, but proof of survival. "Lily wants to visit again," Kale murmured. "Says she misses her mermaid friend." Mira smiled. The child had become a regular presence, helping bridge worlds with innocent enthusiasm that put adults to shame. "Tell her I'll take her swimming. The safe cove, where the dolphins play. She'll love that." They stood together in comfortable silence as darkness fell. It wasn't perfect. Mira still had nightmares, still flinched at unexpected touches. Kale still carried the weight of leadership, still struggled with showing vulnerability. But they were learning, together, that love wasn't about being unbroken. It was about trusting someone else to hold the broken pieces while you healed. And when Mira's time on land ended, and she had to return to the ocean, Kale would be waiting on the beach, patient and constant, for her to come back to him. Because that was their choice. Not destiny forcing their hands, but two wounded souls deciding that together, they were stronger than apart. The prophecy had spoken of a union that would save the world. But what it hadn't said was that sometimes, saving the world began with saving yourself, with choosing to trust again, with believing that scars could become sources of strength, not shame. Mira had been betrayed by humans once, had sworn never to trust again. But she'd also learned that trust was a choice, not a gift. And some choices, no matter how terrifying, were worth making. She chose Kale, chose tomorrow over yesterday, chose love over fear. And in that choice, found not just redemption, but herself, the end.